Member for Mildura.
Thank you, Acting Speaker. Gee whiz, that was 10 minutes of our lives we will never get back. And this is exactly what I mean by that. While the Minister speaks about his loathing for Times New Roman, and just for the record, Century Gothic is my font of choice, there are problems afoot in this state, and we are spending a day debating things like this. And like the member for Malvern said in his leading contribution, there's nothing too objectionable in this bill, but it allows for wide-ranging debate, and there are things going on in this state that should perhaps rather have been discussed and debated in this place this week. But I did want to take a short time just to talk about a few things, and one of those things is not fonts, you'll be happy to know, Acting Speaker, because I did notice the Deputy Speaker was having a hard time keeping it together in the chair, which is probably fair enough. But the member for Malvern during his contribution was talking about Labor's mismanagement of the pandemic, which relates to clause 23. And just for the record, clause 23, allow Governor in Council to make regulations exempting statutory rules from the application of the SLA for a specified time not exceeding 12 months. This will, in effect, extend the application of an existing exemption from regulatory impact statement processes that only applies to legislative instruments to statutory rules, provided that the instrument or rule is responding to a public emergency, urgent public health or safety issue, or damage to the environment, resource sustainability or the economy. Now, this does relate to the Public Health and Wellbeing Act 2008 and the Emergency Management Act. And whilst the member for Malvern was speaking earlier, there were some referrals and references made to small business and what the mismanagement of the pandemic did to small business. And I am one of the products of that. Not the only, by far, it affected everyone in different ways, and the lockdowns, of course, affected people, children, everyone in different ways. But I'm going to just give a little account of my recollection of that time in my small business history. Now, I had a small business for 12 years, just. We managed to get another 12 months out of it, and I wouldn't even call it post-pandemic, but during the pandemic, and that's ultimately what got me so fired up to get into politics. So I could get on the inside and actually make changes that might help small businesses, having been involved. And my parents also run a small business. Luckily for them, they employ people, and their business is structured as such where they received assistance during the pandemic. I was a small business without a bricks and mortar location, which is not unusual in this age of the digital nomad. So didn't employ anyone. That was part of the business plan when we wrote the business plan. Mind you, it was a 5-year business plan originally, and we got 12 years out of it, so that's not too bad. But it was a plan to not employ people full-time from a business management point of view, because we're also a business with a social conscience, understanding that we were there to assist small to medium regional and rural businesses get into the digital world. So digital consulting, social media, websites and all that kind of stuff. So we did it at the lowest cost possible. So employing people simply wasn't an option. We would use freelancers, and the freelance market and entrepreneurship is big business now. So that business model didn't serve very well during the pandemic and setting us up for assistance. And the first thing that goes when bricks and mortar retail shops, food businesses, and all of my clients did such an incredible job to pivot whilst the pandemic was happening, and thinking that, we were out in the regions as well that didn't have a case for many, many, many months. And then when the first one came to Shepparton, I believe, and I would never hold this against the member for Shepparton, but yeah, correct. Shepparton was the most lockdown regional city. We're 6 hours away in tropical North Victoria, and one case in Shepparton means we're locked down, which means everything. and businesses did a great job too, but to pivot and to keep operating. But when fat needs to be cut from a business's bottom line, first thing to go is external resources, things like marketing, digital consulting, things like that. So it was tough for me. Luckily, I had a husband who was an essential worker who was growing food, thank goodness. And we lived on quite a vast open space. Thankfully, I didn't need to take my kids to a playground. We had 3.5 acres for them to ride around on, so we could still go for our runs and get outside every day, which was very, very lucky for us. And I did feel very, very sorry for those inner city children that couldn't go to playgrounds, because that would be heartbreaking. So that was one positive to come out of the pandemic. I got to spend a good 6 months at home with my children, which I'd never had before. But to have one case in regional Victoria originally and then be locked down 6 hours away in Mildura was just incredibly disappointing, to a point where we were almost out of it. We were allowed to run a sports carnival, one case again, 6 hours away somewhere else, lockdown. It was horrific. So when it is spoken about in this place, about how tough small businesses did through the pandemic, through the Public Health and Wellbeing Act and through the Emergency Management Act, and people laugh and they mock, and it is condescending from a small business owner's point of view that only just made it through the pandemic, and then at the very end, I mean, we were still getting tax bills, we were getting no assistance, but they still wanted their tax paid every quarter. That's tough. And it's tough enough out there already, particularly for bricks and mortar businesses, paying land tax, paying rent, all of their overheads skyrocketing, utilities, small business in this state is so tough. It has not got any better since the pandemic. In fact, it's potentially got worse. And in tropical North Victoria, right on the Murray River, we can see people leaving the state, real estate agents included, mind you. It's so hard for them to do business in Victoria, they literally just jump over the river into New South Wales. They can still trade into Victoria. And the development that goes on that we can see, and I have to drive through outback New South Wales on my way to work every single day. 45 minutes of my trip is through outback New South Wales. The development that's going on there is insane. We currently have a resort being built by Rick Kelly, one of the Kelly brothers, and his family, Margaret and John. Trentham Waters, Mildura, it's in New South Wales, because it was easier to start development. It was easier to get approvals. It's less tax. So to say that small business did it tough during a pandemic is an incredible understatement, but it hasn't got any better, Acting Speaker. It really hasn't. It is, it is tough out there. So I wanted to give my perspective on small business and what these acts and what this clause means to small business owners, and just implore everyone to have a bit of a broader perspective. Even the member for Shepparton was also a small business owner, and her husband was a small business owner as well, and it was tough. It was tough, particularly through regional Victoria, while we were trying to get on with our lives, grow food, grow fibre, all the meanwhile having to conform to rules that were essentially made for the city. This bill, look, it's not going to reopen those small businesses. It's not going to help with their land tax bill. It's not going to put food on the table of Victorians who are struggling with the cost of living. It's not going to open more hospital beds. We're taking an entire day to make technical changes to a bill, when in fact we could be making real change. And I said this during my contribution on the government business program earlier this week. Although there's nothing terribly confronting in this bill, because it is based on technicalities, we could be working very, very hard for Victorians to actually alleviate the pressures from all angles the Victorian families are facing right now. It's just another example that Labor cannot manage money, they could not manage the pandemic, and Victorian families are paying the price.